The phone call lasted only 7 seconds. But by the time it ended, Tavian Rossetti was already running. "Boss, come home now." Tavian stopped halfway through the doors of the private conference room. The terrified voice belonged to 19-year-old house attendant Nilo Varin, a young man who had worked at the Rossetti estate for barely 6 months and had never called Tavian directly before. Behind Tavian, 12 powerful men waited around a polished table for him to continue the meeting. He forgot all of them. What happened? Nilo's breathing came hard through the phone. "It's Mrs. Rossetti." Tavian's face changed instantly. "What about my wife? Someone is hurting her." Silence. Then Nilo whispered words that turned Tavian's blood cold. "She locked the doors. I can hear Mrs. Rossetti crying. Boss, please come home now." "Who locked the doors?" Nilo hesitated. "Your sister." Tavian said nothing. The phone almost cracked beneath his fingers. "Where are my security men?" "Lady Marcella sent them to the eastern gate. She told them you ordered it." "I gave no such order." "I know." Tavian was already moving. "Stay outside the room. Do not confront her." "But Mrs. Rossetti." "Nilo." The young man went silent. "Do not enter that room." "I'm coming." Tavian ended the call. His security chief, Breckenholt, had already risen. "What happened?" "My car." "Tavian." "Now." 3 minutes later, a convoy of black vehicles tore through the underground exit of the Ormond Hotel. Tavian sat in the back of the first car, repeatedly calling his wife. Once, twice, 3 times. No answer. His expression became darker with each attempt. "Call the estate," he ordered. Brecken did. The household manager answered. Confusion followed. Nobody seemed to know what was happening. Marcella Rossetti had arrived at the mansion 90 minutes earlier, claiming Tavian had asked her to help his wife prepare for a charity banquet. She had ordered several staff members downstairs. Then she'd requested that the private family wing be cleared. Everyone obeyed. She was Tavian's older sister, a Rossetti. Nobody questioned her. That mistake was about to become very expensive. Tavian called his wife again. This time someone answered. No voice, just breathing. "Urea?" "Nothing." "Urea, talk to me." A faint sound. Then his wife whispered. "Tavian." He closed his eyes. "I'm here." Her voice was shaking. "Where are you?" "Coming home." "Tavian, don't." The call disconnected. Tavian stared at the screen. "Faster." The driver glanced into the mirror. "Sir." "Faster." 23 minutes after Nilo's call, the gates of Rossetti House opened. The convoy barely stopped before Tavian stepped out. He didn't wait for anyone. He crossed the entrance hall, so quickly 2 housekeepers flattened themselves against the wall. Nilo, the young attendant, appeared at the top of the staircase. "Sir." "Where?" "The blue salon." Tavian climbed. Nilo followed. "I tried opening it, but Lady Marcella locked." Tavian reached the corridor. The blue salon door was open now. A chair lay overturned outside. A broken pearl bracelet was scattered across the carpet. Tavian stopped. One pearl rested beside his shoe. He knew that bracelet. He had fastened it around Urea's wrist that morning. His head lifted. Then he heard crying. Not loud. Suppressed. The kind of crying someone made when they had been humiliated so deeply they no longer wanted anyone to hear. Tavian walked into the room and froze. His wife sat on the floor beside a velvet sofa. Urea Rossetti was 34 years old, plus size, striking, usually poised, and almost impossible to intimidate. Tavian had seen her stand before rooms filled with wealthy strangers and speak without notes. He had watched her negotiate contracts with people who assumed her softness meant weakness. He had seen her laugh at gossip columns that criticized her body and then wear exactly the dress those writers claim she shouldn't. But he had never seen her like this. Her pale blue evening dress had been torn near one shoulder. Mascara streaked her cheeks. One shoe was missing. Her hair, usually pinned elegantly, had fallen loose. And beside her lay the remains of something Tavian recognized immediately. A dress. Not just any dress. Urea's wedding reception gown. The champagne-colored gown she had preserved for 6 years because her late grandmother had sewn part of its embroidery by hand. It had been cut through the middle with tailoring scissors. Tavian stared at it, then at Urea. then slowly toward the woman standing beside the window. Marcella. His sister held the scissors. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Marcella finally lowered them. Tavian. He didn't answer. Uriah wiped her face quickly. Tavian, please. He walked toward her. Marcella stepped forward. You need to understand what happened. Tavian passed her without looking. He crouched in front of his wife. Look at me. Uriah couldn't. Uriah. Her eyes finally met his. Are you hurt? She shook her head. He noticed red marks around her wrist. His expression changed. Did she touch you? Uriah swallowed. Tavian. Did she touch you? Marcella interrupted. She was hysterical. I was trying to stop her from. Tavian stood. The room seemed to shrink. Brecken arrived in the doorway with 2 security men. Tavian looked at his sister for the first time. Put the scissors down. Marcella stared. Don't speak to me as though I'm some stranger who broke into your house. Put them down. She dropped them onto the table. You're making this ridiculous. Tavian looked at the destroyed wedding dress. Then, at his crying wife. Am I? You don't know what she did. Tavian's voice became dangerously calm. I know what you did. No, you don't. I know you entered my home using my name. I know you gave my employees false instructions. I know you redirected my security. And I know I came home to find my wife crying on the floor while you stood over her holding scissors. Marcella's face tightened. She's been destroying this family for 6 years. Uriah closed her eyes. Tavian turned. What? Marcella pointed toward Uriah. She married you for money. Stop. She isolated you from us. Marcella. She has manipulated you into handing everything to a woman who doesn't belong in our world. Tavian went completely still. There it was. The sentence behind 6 years of smiles. 6 years of passive remarks. 6 years of dinners where Marcella praised thinner women in front of Uriah. 6 years of sending designers who conveniently never carried Uriah's size. 6 years of pretending each humiliation was accidental. But Tavian still did not know the worst part. Because Marcella hadn't come to the mansion merely to insult his wife. She had come searching for something. And what she had found threatened to expose a betrayal inside the Rossetti family that had begun long before Tavian ever met Uriah. To understand why Tavian Rossetti raced home that afternoon, you have to understand the woman he found crying on the floor. 6 years earlier, Uriah Dane had not wanted to meet him. She had been running a small but respected restoration studio in the river city of Bellecourt. Not paintings, textiles, old dresses, hand-embroidered ceremonial cloths, historic tapestries, family heirlooms damaged by fire, water, age, and neglect. Uriah loved broken things that people assumed could never be beautiful again. Her grandmother had taught her sewing when she was 7. Fabric remembers, the old woman used to say. Pull too hard and it tears. Treat it patiently, and sometimes you can save what everyone else throws away. Uriah remembered those words for the rest of her life. Tavian entered her studio because of his mother's coat. His mother, Celestine Rossetti, had died when Tavian was 28. She left behind a hand-embroidered winter coat damaged after years in storage. 3 specialists told Tavian Restoration would destroy it. Someone recommended Uriah. He arrived without appointment. Black suit, 2 security men, expression suggesting he considered smiling a negotiable expense. Uriah looked at him, then at his men. My studio isn't large enough for all 3 of you. The guards looked at Tavian. Tavian raised an eyebrow. They stay. Then you don't. Nobody spoke to Tavian like that. He looked around the tiny studio. Do you know who I am? Yes. And your shoulders are not narrow enough to justify 3 people occupying my doorway. One security guard coughed to hide a laugh. Tavian looked at him. The man immediately became fascinated by the ceiling. Eventually Tavian left both guards outside. Uriah examined the coat. It could be restored. Tavian's face changed. Others said no. Others are afraid of making it worse. You aren't. Terrified. Tavian frowned. Then why accept? Because fear and inability aren't the same thing. That sentence stayed with him. So did she. Over the following 6 weeks, Tavian found unnecessary reasons to visit. How was the embroidery? Could the lining be preserved? Should he approve the thread color? Did she need historical photographs? Urea eventually put down her needle. Mr. Rossetti. Yes. You visited 4 times this week. It is an important coat. You spent less time inspecting a shipping terminal your company bought for $40 million. Tavian stared. How do you know that? Newspapers. She smiled. Would you like coffee? Yes. That was their first unofficial date. Their second involved dinner. Their third became an argument because Tavian attempted to reserve an entire restaurant so Urea wouldn't be disturbed. She refused to enter. I am not eating in an empty restaurant. Why? Because it's strange. Privacy, paranoia, security, ego. He stared. She smiled. He canceled the reservation. They ate at a tiny restaurant where Tavian spent half the evening pretending he didn't notice people staring. Urea noticed. Does it bother you? What? People looking. I'm used to it. I meant people looking at me. Tavian frowned. Why would that bother me? Urea hesitated. Because she had dated men who loved her privately and became uncomfortable publicly. Men who praised her confidence but suggested she lose weight before meeting their families. Men who called her beautiful and then behaved as though her body required an apology. She had learned not to assume admiration meant courage. Tavian seemed genuinely confused. Urea. Yes. If someone at another table has an opinion about your body, I cannot imagine information less relevant to my dinner. She laughed. That was when she began falling for him. Tavian fell first. Harder. And with absolutely no dignity. Brecken discovered this when Tavian ordered him to locate a rare 19th century sewing box because Urea mentioned one during lunch. You're buying her antique needles? It is a sewing box. That distinction has transformed my understanding. Find it. You run an organization feared across 3 provinces, and yet somehow you remain employed. Brecken found the box. Tavian proposed 11 months later. Urea said no. He stared at her. No, not yet. You love me. I do. I love you. I know. Then which part is unclear? Your family. Tavian understood immediately. Marcella had never accepted Urea. Neither had several older Rossetti relatives. To them, marriage was alliance, bloodline, status. Urea came from ordinary people. Worse, in Marcella's eyes, she refused to transform herself into what wealthy society expected. She didn't diet before galas, didn't hide in black clothing, didn't laugh when people made jokes about her size, didn't treat being chosen by Tavian as though she had won a lottery. Once, at dinner, Marcella said, "You're remarkably confident for someone built like you." Urea smiled. "And you're remarkably comfortable saying rude things in someone else's home." Tavian nearly choked on his wine. Marcella never forgave her. Before accepting Tavian's proposal, Urea made one condition. "If I marry you, you defend our marriage before people enter our home." Tavian frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means I don't want you waiting until someone destroys me before deciding they cross a line." The words would haunt him 6 years later. Tavian promised. And for a while, he believed he kept that promise. He married Urea in a private ceremony overlooking the sea. Her grandmother helped embroider her reception gown despite trembling hands. 3 months later, the old woman died. The dress became one of Urea's most precious possessions. Marriage wasn't perfect. Tavian was controlling. Urea was stubborn. He brought 6 security officers on their honeymoon. She sent 4 home. He attempted to track her car. She found the device and placed it inside Brecken's briefcase. For 2 days, Tavian believed his wife was attending security meetings. Brecken thought it was hilarious. Tavian did not. But they loved each other. Deeply. Urea transformed the mansion without redecorating much of it. She opened rooms that had remained closed since Celestine died. Hosted dinners for staff. Started a textile preservation foundation. And slowly made Tavian's enormous, intimidating estate feel like somewhere people actually lived. Marcella watched all of it. Her resentment grew. Not merely because she disliked Urea, because Tavian began changing. For years, Marcella had been one of the few people who influenced him. After their father died, she controlled many family relationships while Tavian managed business. Then Uriah arrived. She encouraged Tavian to separate legitimate companies from the criminal organization he had inherited. She questioned family accounts, asked why certain charitable foundations had no visible projects, encouraged independent audits. Marcella interpreted every question as an attack. Then, 2 months before the afternoon Tavian raced home, Uriah discovered something. She was reviewing documents from the Celestine Rossetti Foundation. The foundation supposedly funded shelters for women escaping domestic violence. Uriah wanted to partner with it. The numbers looked impressive. Too impressive. Millions had supposedly been spent renovating 3 facilities. Uriah visited one. The address belonged to an abandoned warehouse. The second facility had closed 4 years earlier. The third had never existed. Uriah said nothing to Marcella. She hired an independent forensic accountant. The preliminary findings were devastating. Money had been leaving the foundation through consulting companies connected to Marcella's husband, Rovan Essick. Millions. Over nearly 8 years. Uriah told Tavian. He didn't believe her. Not at first. Marcella would never steal from Mother's foundation. Uriah didn't argue. She placed the documents on his desk. Then prove me wrong. Tavian investigated privately. The evidence grew. He planned to confront Marcella after confirming everything. But Marcella learned about the investigation first, and she assumed Uriah was responsible. That afternoon, Tavian was supposed to remain at the Ormont meeting until midnight. Marcella arrived at the mansion, smiling, carrying garment bags. "I thought we could finally stop fighting," she told Uriah. Uriah was suspicious, but hopeful. Marcella claimed she wanted to help prepare for the foundation banquet. For nearly 30 minutes, everything remained civil. Then Marcella asked, "Where are the audit files?" Uriah stopped. "What files? Don't insult me." Uriah put down her tea. "You need to speak with Tavian." "I'm speaking to you." "Then you're speaking to the wrong person." Marcella's smile vanished. "You think marrying my brother makes you untouchable?" "No. You think because he enjoys playing husband to you, you can destroy our family?" Uriah stood. "I'm not discussing this." She headed toward the door. Marcella locked it. That was when Nilo heard the first argument. Inside, Marcella demanded the audit evidence. Uriah refused. Marcella accused her of turning Tavian against his blood. Then the insults became personal. "You know why he married you?" Uriah remained silent. "Because you were different. A novelty." Uriah looked at her. Marcella continued. "He'll eventually remember what women beside men like him are supposed to look like." Uriah almost laughed. "You've been waiting 6 years to say that without witnesses. You think you're beautiful because Tavian tells you?" "No." Uriah's voice remained steady. "I thought I was beautiful before I met your brother." That infuriated Marcella more. "You always were arrogant." "Confidence isn't arrogance because it comes in my size." Marcella stepped closer. "Give me the files." "No." "Where are they?" "With people you cannot intimidate." Marcella's face changed. She grabbed Uriah's wrist. "Tell me." "Let go." "Tell me." Uriah pulled away. Her pearl bracelet snapped. Pearls scattered across the floor. Outside, Nilo heard the crash. Then Marcella opened a wardrobe. Inside hung Uriah's preserved wedding reception gown. Marcella knew what it meant. She had attended the wedding. She knew Uriah's grandmother helped make it. She removed the gown. Uriah's face changed. "Put that back." Marcella smiled. "Now you care about family history?" "Marcella, you're destroying mine." She picked up tailoring scissors from Uriah's restoration table. Uriah rushed toward her. Marcella shoved her backward. Uriah struck the sofa and fell. Then Marcella cut through the gown. Once, Uriah screamed. "Stop!" Another cut. The embroidered panel fell to the floor. Uriah crawled toward it. "You're insane." Marcella stood over her. "Tell Tavian to stop the audit." Uriah held the ruined fabric against her chest. Tears came, not because it was expensive, because her grandmother's hands had stitched those flowers. Marcella had destroyed something that could never truly be replaced. Outside, Nilo called Tavian. And now, 23 minutes later, Tavian stood in the same room. He had heard enough, but he wanted everything. He turned toward Nilo. Get the security footage. Marcella laughed nervously. There is no camera inside this room. No. Tavian looked toward the hallway. But there are cameras outside. Marcella's face changed. Brecken. Yes. Lock down every recording from the last 2 hours. Already done. Marcella stared at Tavian. You're treating your sister like a criminal. Tavian looked at the marks on Uriah's wrist. I haven't decided how I'm treating you yet. Tavian. No. His voice rose for the first time. Do not say my name as though I am embarrassing you. The room went silent. You came into my home. You lied to my staff. You isolated my wife. You put your hands on her. And you destroyed something belonging to a dead woman because you thought grief would make Uriah surrender evidence. Marcella's eyes widened. You know about the audit. I ordered it. That landed like a blow. Marcella looked at Uriah. No. Tavian stepped between them. Look at me. Marcella did. Uriah didn't turn me against you. You did that yourself. Marcella's face collapsed. She convinced you. My wife showed me numbers. Bank records. Companies. Signatures. Your signatures. Marcella shook her head. Rovan handled the accounts. Then you can explain that to the investigators. What investigators? Tavian didn't answer immediately. Then Marcella understood. You called the authorities? I called attorneys and financial investigators 2 days ago. You would expose your own family? Tavian stared at her. You stole from shelters created in our mother's name. I moved money. For what? Family expenses. Your villas? Silence. Rovan's gambling debts? Marcella looked away. Your jewelry? Tavian. Mother built that foundation after watching her best friend nearly die in an abusive marriage. His voice cracked with anger. You stole from women she wanted to protect. Marcella's eyes filled. And now you come here and put your hands on my wife. For the first time, Marcella seemed frightened. Not of the Mafia Boss. Of her brother. Because he was looking at her as though he no longer recognized her. And if you're still watching, subscribe to the channel, because the phone call that brought Tavian home was about to expose something even he had missed. Uriah had been protecting far more than evidence. And the young employee who risked his job to call the Mafia Boss was about to change what happened next. Tavian turned toward Brecken. Escort Marcella out. Marcella stared. You're throwing me out? Yes. I'm your sister. And Uriah is my wife. Blood should mean something. It does. Tavian looked devastated now rather than angry. That's why this hurts. Marcella's expression softened. For a second, she looked like the older sister who had bandaged his knees when they were children. Tavian, please. He almost broke. Uriah saw it. She knew he loved Marcella. Consequences did not erase love. Sometimes they made it more painful. Tavian looked away. Go. Brecken stepped forward. Marcella left without another word. Tavian immediately returned to Uriah. She had gathered the pieces of her dress. He crouched. Can it be repaired? Uriah looked at the torn embroidery. I don't know. I'll find anyone you need. Tavian. Anywhere in the world. Tavian. He stopped. This isn't something money automatically fixes. He lowered his head. I know. She touched one torn flower. My grandmother made this section. I remember. I can repair fabric, but I can't put her hands back into it. Tavian closed his eyes. I'm sorry. Uriah looked at him. You didn't cut it. No. But you warned me. She became quiet. 6 years earlier. I don't want you waiting until someone destroys me before deciding they cross a line. Tavian remembered. I failed you. Uriah didn't rush to reassure him. That surprised him. She usually softened his guilt. Not today. You kept calling Marcella's behavior harmless. Tavian nodded. You said she needed time. Yes. You said her comments were just how she was. Yes. You told me ignoring her would make it stop. His voice dropped. Yes. It didn't. No. Uriah wiped her face. She didn't become this person today, Tavian. He looked at her. She simply stopped hiding it. That sentence hurt. Because it was true. Tavian had defended Uriah when insults became obvious. But too often, he had required obviousness. He ignored subtle cruelty because confronting his sister was uncomfortable. He told himself Uriah was strong enough to handle it. But someone being strong did not give others permission to keep hurting them. Tavian took her hand. What do you need from me? Not revenge. He nodded. Not intimidation. Yes. I want the truth handled properly. It will be. And Nilo. What about him? He called you. Yes. He could lose his job in many wealthy houses for disobeying a family member. He won't. I know. She looked toward the doorway. Make sure everyone else knows too. Tavian understood. The next morning, every employee at Rossetti House attended a meeting. Tavian stood before them. Uriah was not present. She needed space. Tavian addressed the staff himself. What happened yesterday happened partly because several of you believed a member of my family could override household security without verification. Nobody moved. That will never happen again. New protocols followed. No relative could redirect security without direct authorization. No staff member could be ordered away from a private family area if they believed someone was in danger. Employees could contact Brecken directly. And Nilo? Tavian called him forward. The young man looked terrified. Sir, if I did something wrong. You did. Nilo's face fell. You waited too long to call me. He blinked. Tavian continued. Next time you believe someone in this house is being harmed, you call immediately. Yes, sir. And if anyone threatens your employment for doing that, they answer to me. Nilo nodded. Thank you. Tavian shook his hand. Word spread through the household. Not that Nilo had been rewarded for loyalty to the boss, but he had been protected for doing the right thing. There was a difference. Meanwhile, the investigation into the Foundation accelerated. Rovin Essek disappeared before investigators could question him. For 4 days, nobody knew where he was. Then he contacted an attorney. Records revealed he had orchestrated much of the scheme. Marcella had signed documents and benefited from the money, but she had not understood the full scale of what Rovin was doing until later. Then she helped conceal it. That distinction mattered legally. It did not erase responsibility. Marcella eventually cooperated. Assets were frozen. Properties purchased with Foundation money were identified. Civil recovery proceedings began. Tavian refused to interfere. Several relatives called. You're allowing outsiders to humiliate your sister. Tavian answered the same way every time. My sister made choices. One uncle threatened to cut ties. Tavian said, do what you need to do. Another accused Uriah of engineering everything. Tavian ended the call. For the first time in 6 years, he stopped requiring his wife to defend herself against people he should have confronted himself. Uriah noticed, but healing between them took time. The destroyed gown remained in her studio. For weeks, she couldn't touch it. Then one evening, Nilo knocked on the door. Ma'am, yes. My grandmother wants to speak with you. Uriah frowned. Why? Nilo entered carrying a small box. My grandmother was an embroidery teacher for 40 years. He opened it. Inside were antique needles and restoration threads. I told her about the dress. Uriah looked at him. You told her? Not everything. He became embarrassed. Just that something important was damaged. She said if the original maker taught you her stitches, maybe you can restore it without pretending the damage never happened. Uriah stared. What does that mean? Nilo handed her a note. His grandmother had written, a repaired cloth does not become a cloth it was before. Sometimes the repair becomes part of its history. Uriah read it twice, then cried. Not like the afternoon Marcella destroyed the dress. These tears felt different. 3 days later, she began. She did not hide every cut. Instead, she used a restoration technique that reinforced damaged sections while preserving visible traces of where the fabric had been broken. Tavian watched from the doorway. You're leaving the seams visible. Yes. Why? Because it happened. He nodded. Uriah looked at him. Some things don't need to look untouched to be beautiful again. Tavian knew she wasn't only talking about the gown. Their marriage had changed too. He had come home in time to stop the confrontation from becoming worse. But he had not protected Uriah from years of smaller wounds that could not be undone with flowers, jewelry, money, or threats. So Tavian did something harder. He changed his behavior. When relatives made comments, he responded before Uriah had to. When someone insulted her body at a private dinner by suggesting she might prefer something slimming, Tavian calmly asked, "What exactly do you mean?" The woman turned red. "Nothing." "Then don't say it." Urea nearly smiled into her wine. Later she told him, "You're learning." Slowly. Painfully. Very. The strangest change happened 6 months later. Marcella requested a meeting with Urea. Tavian said no. Urea said yes. He stared. "What?" "Because she asked." "You owe her nothing." "I know." "Then why?" "Because I want to hear what she has to say." Tavian reluctantly agreed. The meeting happened in a neutral office with attorneys nearby. Marcella looked different. Not physically. Something in her certainty had disappeared. She sat opposite Urea. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Marcella said, "I'm sorry." Urea waited. Marcella's eyes filled. "I have rehearsed explanations. My marriage was collapsing. Rova manipulated me. I was terrified of losing everything. I resented you. All of those things are true." She swallowed. "None excuse what I did." Urea remained silent. Marcella continued. "I knew what that dress meant." "Yes. I destroyed it because I knew." "Yes. I wanted to hurt you enough that you would give me what I wanted." Urea's voice was quiet. "Yes." Marcella looked down. "I also hated how comfortable you were with yourself." Urea hadn't expected that. Marcella laughed bitterly. "You walked into rooms where people judged you, and somehow you didn't shrink. You were colors I spent my whole life being afraid to wear. You ate dinner without pretending you weren't hungry. You laughed loudly. You challenged Tavian. You never seemed grateful that wealthy people allowed you near them." Urea stared. Marcella continued. "I spent my life following rules I hated. Then you arrived and ignored them. And instead of questioning the rules, I hated you." Urea's expression softened slightly. Not forgiveness. Understanding. Marcella wiped her eyes. "I made your body a target because it was easier than admitting I envied your freedom." Urea took a long breath. "Do you know what the worst part was?" "The dress." "No." Marcella looked up. "The years before it. The comments everyone told me to ignore. The chairs. The dresses. The photographs where you made sure I stood at the edge. The jokes. The little things." Urea leaned forward. "People think cruelty only counts when someone is crying on the floor. But usually there are hundreds of smaller moments before that." Marcella nodded. "I know." "No." Urea's voice remained gentle. "You're beginning to know." Marcella accepted that. Urea did not promise friendship. She did not promise immediate forgiveness. She simply said, "I hope you become someone who would never do it again." Marcella cried. "So do I." They left separately. Tavian waited for Urea outside. "How was it?" "Hard." "Do you forgive her?" "I don't know yet." Tavian nodded. He opened the car door. Urea stopped. "You're not going to ask what she said? If you want to tell me, you will." Urea smiled. "You really are learning. Apparently marriage is educational. Very expensive education. I married a textile restorer. I knew the risks." She laughed. And Tavian realized how much he had missed that sound. A year after the incident, the Celestine Rossetti Foundation reopened under independent management. Every recovered asset went back into its programs. Tavian refused to control the board. Urea refused too. Instead, survivors, social workers, financial professionals, and community representatives made up the majority. At the reopening ceremony, Tavian expected Urea to wear something new. She came downstairs wearing the repaired wedding reception gown. He stopped breathing. The champagne fabric had been restored. The flowers embroidered by her grandmother remained. But through several sections ran delicate visible seams. Not ugly. Beautiful. Honest. Tavian stared. "You fixed it." Urea looked down. "No." He frowned. "I repaired it." "Difference?" "A big one." She touched one seam. "Fix suggests what happened disappeared." "It didn't." Tavian looked at her. But neither did the dress. She smiled. He offered his hand. At the event, nobody knew the full story behind the gown. Urea preferred it that way. Some things belonged to families. Others belonged to courts. Not everything belonged to an audience. Nilo attended with his grandmother. Urea hugged the elderly woman. "Your note saved this dress." The The woman shook her head. No, you saved it. I merely reminded you that damage and destruction are not always the same thing. Across the room, Tavian watched. Brecken stood beside him. You know, Brecken said, you've become significantly less terrifying. Tavian looked at him. Have I? No. Brecken took a drink. I wanted to see whether marriage had improved your sense of humor. It hasn't. Good. Tavian looked toward Urea again. I almost lost her. Brecken became serious. No, I don't mean physically. Tavian lowered his voice. I kept asking her to tolerate things because confronting my family was inconvenient. Brecken said nothing. I thought protecting her meant responding when something big happened. But sometimes protection is believing someone when they tell you the small things are hurting them. Brecken nodded. Tavian had learned something else too. Urea did not need a Mafia Boss to rescue her. She had resisted Marcella before he arrived, protected the audit, refused intimidation, called out cruelty. Tavian's role wasn't to become the hero of her story. It was to become the husband he had promised to be. That distinction changed everything. 2 years later, Nilo became assistant household manager. Not because he called Tavian that afternoon, because he proved repeatedly that he could be trusted when doing the right thing was uncomfortable. Urea expanded her restoration studio. She began teaching apprentices. One wall displayed photographs of damaged textiles before and after restoration. The wedding gown was never displayed. That remained hers. Marcella's future was more complicated. Legal proceedings continued. She accepted responsibility for her involvement in the foundation fraud. Her marriage to Rovan ended. She sold several personal assets voluntarily to contribute toward restitution beyond what the courts required. She and Tavian spoke occasionally. Their relationship would never return to what it was. Perhaps it shouldn't. One afternoon, Marcella sent Urea a package. Inside was a single pearl. One of the pearls from the bracelet that broke during their confrontation. Marcella had found it beneath a cabinet before leaving the mansion. There was no dramatic letter. Only one sentence. I should have returned this long ago. Urea added the pearl to a small box. She did not rebuild the bracelet. Some things did not need rebuilding. That too was healing. On their 9th wedding anniversary, Tavian took Urea back to Bellacourt, to the tiny restaurant where they'd had their first real dinner. It had changed owners. The tables were newer, the menu different, but Tavian requested the same corner. Urea looked around. You didn't buy the restaurant, did you? No. Promise. I considered it. Tavian, I didn't. She laughed. They ordered dinner. Halfway through, Urea noticed him watching her. What? Nothing. You're staring. I'm allowed. What? He thought for a moment. Because 9 years ago, you sat in that chair and asked whether I was embarrassed by people looking at you. Urea remembered. And I thought the question was ridiculous. It wasn't ridiculous to me. I know that now. She reached across the table. Tavian held her hand. I can't stop people looking. No. I can't stop every cruel opinion. No. But you should never have to wonder whether the person beside you agrees with them. Urea became quiet. That, she said, is much better than buying the restaurant. Good. Also cheaper. Less good. She laughed again. Years later, people who worked at Rossetti House still remembered the afternoon Tavian returned unexpectedly. Some remember the convoy. Others remembered his expression. Nilo remembered the terrifying moment he pressed Tavian's private number. Brecken remembered trying to keep his employer from ordering the driver to violate every traffic law in the city. But Urea remembered something different. She remembered sitting on the floor, her grandmother's embroidery in pieces, her wrist aching, her dignity bruised, and then seeing Tavian in the doorway. For years, she thought the most important thing he did that afternoon was rush home. It wasn't. The most important thing happened afterward. He listened. He believed her. He stopped explaining away behavior that made him uncomfortable to confront. He allowed his sister to face consequences without turning those consequences into revenge. He changed the household systems that had allowed someone to isolate Urea. He protected the employee who sounded the alarm. And perhaps hardest of all for a man like Tavian Rossetti, he admitted, I should have listened sooner. That was what made their marriage stronger. Not the fact that the Mafia Boss came home. Not the fact that powerful men obeyed him. Not even the fear his name inspired. It was what he did when power alone could not repair the damage. He learned. And Uriah never became smaller to make his family more comfortable. She remained plus size. She remained outspoken. She continued wearing bright colors. Continued laughing loudly. Continued ordering dessert when she wanted dessert. Continued walking into rooms without apologizing for the amount of space she occupied. And Tavian loved her. Not despite any of those things. Not because he was unusually generous enough to overlook them. They were simply parts of the woman he had chosen. The woman who restored his mother's coat. The woman who told his bodyguards they were blocking her doorway. The woman who refused his first proposal because love without boundaries wasn't enough. The woman who uncovered millions missing from a foundation because she cared enough to ask where the money was actually going. And the woman he found crying one terrible afternoon who still had enough strength to tell him, "Don't give me revenge. Give me the truth." On their 10th anniversary, Tavian asked what she wanted. No jewelry. All right. No cars. Fine. No surprise property. That eliminates most things. Uriah smiled. I want dinner at home. That's all. With the staff. Tavian frowned. Our anniversary dinner? Yes. Why? Because this house became better because people stopped being afraid to speak. So they did. Nilo came. Brecken came. Cooks. Drivers, housekeepers, security staff, people who had been present before the incident, people hired afterward. No formal seating, no hierarchy at the tables. At one point, someone spilled wine near Tavian. The room went silent. Tavian looked at the stain, then at the terrified young waiter. Uriah watched him. Tavian sighed. It's wine, not an assassination attempt. The room exploded with laughter. Even Tavian smiled. Later, when everyone had gone, Uriah found him alone in the blue salon. The same room. It had been redecorated, but she knew exactly where she had fallen. Tavian looked at her. You okay? Yes. She walked toward the window. Do you ever wish we'd removed this room? Yes. Why didn't you? Because you asked me not to. Uriah nodded. I didn't want Marcella to own a room in my home forever. Tavian came beside her. She rested her head against his shoulder. Outside, the estate lights glowed across the gardens. Tavian, yes. When Nilo called you that day, what did you think? He didn't answer immediately. That I was too late. Uriah looked up. For what? I didn't know. He swallowed. I just knew you needed me, and I wasn't there. You came. Yes. She smiled sadly. But the better version of you understands something now. What? I needed you before Nilo called. Tavian closed his eyes. Yes. She squeezed his hand. And you understand now. Yes. Then that's enough for tonight. They stood together. No dramatic music. No enemies. No threats. Just two people inside a room that once held one of the worst moments of their marriage. Still together. Still imperfect. Still learning. And perhaps that was the real ending. Because love isn't proven only when someone races home after an emergency. Sometimes it's proven in all the ordinary days afterward. When you listen before the tears. When you believe someone before the evidence becomes impossible to ignore. When you set boundaries with people you love. When you apologize without defending yourself. When you stop asking someone strong to tolerate what they should never have had to tolerate. And when something precious is damaged, you don't pretend the damage never happened. You decide whether there is enough love, honesty, accountability, and patience left to repair it. Uriah repaired her gown. Marcella could never return the hours her grandmother spent stitching it. Tavian could never erase the years he dismissed his sister's smaller insults. But the repaired seams became part of the story. Not proof that nothing happened. Proof that something survived. And if this story stayed with you, subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories about loyalty, hidden betrayal, unexpected courage, family secrets, and the moments that reveal who truly stands beside you when everything changes. Before you go, tell me in the comments which moment stayed with you the most. Was it when 19-year-old Nilo risked everything and secretly called Tavian, saying, "Boss, come home now. She's hurting her"? Was it when Tavian rushed into the blue salon and froze after seeing his plus-size wife crying on the floor beside the wedding gown her grandmother had helped make? Was it the moment Urea refused revenge and told him she wanted the truth instead? Or was it when she finally restored the damaged gown without hiding every scar and wore it again as proof that something could be changed by what happened to it without being destroyed by it? If you enjoyed the story, like the video and share it with someone who believes love should never require a person to become smaller, quieter, or easier for other people to accept. Because Tavian Rossetti thought the most important thing he did that afternoon was race home when the phone rang. It wasn't. The phone call only got him through the door. The real test came afterward. When the Fear Mafia boss had to learn that protecting the woman he loved wasn't about making the whole world afraid of him. It was about making sure she never again had to suffer in silence, simply because the person hurting her happened to share his blood.